today. Musa said, seek the help of Allah. Do you understand now why he said that? Because whose help were they trying to seek? When they got nervous, they're trying to seek Fir'aun's help, the government's help. Don't stop now. Don't leave your Islam now. It was easy, even though Islam was not easy at all. Now, at that time, holding on to Islam and staying on Islam became very difficult.
Lahir di kota Berlin, Jerman. Ustadz Nouman dikenal karena kajian Alquran miliknya di Bayina Institute. Storytellingnya bisa memukau banyak orang. Ia selalu menyampaikan keindahan Alquran dengan cara yang begitu indah.
So my childhood was spent in many different places. My earliest childhood was in Germany. And then I spent a little bit from the age of 6 and 7, I spent a little bit of time in Pakistan, less than a year. And then I spent from the age of 7 until about 13 in Saudi, in Riyadh. What shaped my childhood in those years? I think for the most part, the most influential part of my childhood was probably my parents and my teachers in school, and probably my close friends from that time. But the other part of it was I never really felt like I had a permanent home because we kept moving, right? So I don't feel like I have a homeland per se because I never really got attached to any one place. So if I was to describe my teenage years, I guess, it would just be that I was just living a distracted life. And my biggest goal in life was maybe to fit in and to be like everybody else and to not be made fun of, or maybe to become likable to other people. Right, that seemed like a big priority. I was very insecure also, very nervous also. I also think I was quite afraid of social settings. I had social anxiety as a teenager because I felt like an outsider. Yeah, that's how it started. I think what got me into studying the Quran to begin with is I felt that it was speaking to me. And that's probably definitely that was the only real motivation I had to study the Quran, because it felt like it was a conversation directly with me, and it was piercing through me and seeing through me.
Setelah dewasa, ia pun pergi menuju masjid di Queens, New York. Kawannya mengajak Ustadz Nouman ikut dalam sebuah program daurah tafsir Al-Quran saat Ramadan. Disitulah perjalanannya dimulai. Ia pun merasa bahwa Al-Quran membicarakan dirinya yang dulu.
I think there were many instances where I was struck, but I would have to say the two things that stick out more than anything else is first Surah Al-Baqarah, because I think Surah Al-Baqarah more than anything else gave me a sense of identity. And I think I still believe that Surah Al-Baqarah is the best study to develop a strong sense of identity. And there's this ayah from Surah Al-Kahf that really hit me. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَنْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ إِذَا نَسِيتَ وَقُلْ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَهْدِيَنِي رَبِّي لِأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَذَا رَشَدًا. That there's a hope that Allah will guide me to closer than where I am now in my quest for truth and rightness. So there was this idea that I understand something now, but my prayer is Allah will give me one step closer. And then tomorrow I'll make the same dua and I'll be one step closer. So I never feel like I've arrived. I've arrived at guidance. I've only arrived at one step. And my goal now is to find the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, right? So it made me really think about my relationship with the Quran, my relationship with Islam, my relationship with Allah as just a series of steps. And you never actually say to yourself, okay, now I have a relationship, or now I'm done, or now I know the Quran. You don't get to say that because it's لِأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَذَا, right? I hope Allah will guide me to something closer than where I am now in terms of Rashad. So that was, I think, probably a very fundamental ayah that shaped my thinking.
Ia kini merasa menemukan identitasnya lewat Al-Quran dan menuju titik-titik yang semakin dekat kepada Allah. Tapi, bisa nggak sih sebetulnya manusia hidup tanpa petunjuk dari Al-Quran?
Allah put fitrah inside human beings to give them some sense of direction. There were people who never heard of the Quran, and they were on the right path. And then they came into contact with the Quran and they said, they already recognized it to be true because something inside them was already telling them that it's true. So Allah did not make the Quran the only source of guidance, it made it the perfect source of guidance. Some guidance will be found everywhere. So, virtually any philosophy will have some guidance, even though it's mixed with misguidance. Even the Bible, even though we believe the Bible has been changed a lot, Allah says, Fihi hudan wa nur. In it still there is some guidance and some light. Allah says that. So what I believe about the Quran is that when someone is seeking guidance, they're going to take steps. Eventually they'll lead to a step which will lead them to the Quran. So the Quran is not the only source of guidance, but the Quran is the greatest milestone of guidance. It's the greatest place to reach in guidance. And I don't believe anybody who's seeking guidance from God will be left without finding the Quran. If they're truly seeking it, then Allah will show them Allah's book.
Saya mencoba membayangkan hidup bersama Al-Quran. Mendapatkan sebuah makna di dalamnya terasa seperti ada semacam kebahagiaan dan kejelasan.
I think more than joy and clarity, I think it's, you feel awed. You feel overwhelmed. Like if I was to try to describe it to you, it feels like when the followers, the 70 leaders of Banu Israel were standing next to Musa alayhi salam, Allah raised a mountain above them. وَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُ وَاقِعٌ بِهِمْ. They thought it was going to fall on them, right? What they must have felt. Sometimes just understanding something about the Quran feels like there's a mountain right above you, right? It's very heavy. It's a very heavy feeling. Other times it's just gratitude to Allah, because sometimes you have a question in your heart or you have a confusion, and then an ayah comes and just unties the knot and solves that problem. So you get a great sense of relief from the Quran. So even Allah describes that there are ayat that make the skin rise, and then there are other ayat that make the skin calm down, right? So the Quran has these multiple effects, and I can testify that in my life, many occasions there have been those kinds of effects. I wish there were more occasions of that, actually, because even though the mind can study the Quran, it's the heart that has to feel it, right? And doesn't matter how much you've studied, getting your heart to feel the Quran is a very conscious exercise. And even if you're just a beginner or you're an expert or you've been studying for 40 years, doesn't matter. You can still feel a disconnect with the Quran, and you can still find a new connection with the Quran spiritually. Yeah.
Baginya, belajar dan mengajar adalah dua sisi koin yang gak bisa dipisahkan.
And my goal became, I just really want to understand what he's saying. And then the moment I would learn something about what he's saying, I wanted my friends to know. I wanted them to know what I discovered, right? So sharing was never my objective. Originally sharing was just a consequence of what I was learning. And then sharing itself gave me so much meaning and so much joy that it became a partner with the learning. So like learning and sharing became two sides of the same coin for me. So I find a lot of meaning in learning, and I also find a lot of meaning in sharing. And it's actually kind of beautiful because I pray that Allah accepts all of us, and including myself, that we become part of the hadith, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ. The best of you are the ones who learn the Quran. That's the learning part. وَعَلَّمَ, and teach it, which is the sharing part, right? So they're both actually very meaningful, rich activities. And I don't claim that just because I'm teaching Allah's book, that somehow I'm the best example of Allah's book. Allah's book is too grand, and I'm far too sinful and imperfect as a human being to ever be a model for Allah's book. But learning and teaching itself is a righteous activity, and all of us are trying to do our best to improve, inshallah.